Welcome to the She Wins podcast. I am your host, Elisa Devine, award-winning and best-selling author. When one woman tells her story, it inspires more women to do the same. Domestic violence thrives in secrecy. So to eliminate it, we tell our stories, we open the conversations, and we identify changes to be made. And that is what we are doing here today.
Through this whole time of waiting for trial, going to trial, coming home from trial, I had this amazing network of people, right? And not just from the recovery community, right? Not just from other recovering drug addicts that know how hard it is to keep the needle out of their neck, not pick up their drink, and understand that you need support when you're going through shit like this. But I think my mother was killed in April of 2018. My mother's birthday is June 8th. And so within those 3 months, I got this little angel that kind of popped into my life, right? Her name's Laverne Gordon, right? And Laverne reached out to me, and one of the most, so I was in shock through all this. I didn't know what to do, right? So I'm just all I know how to do is advocate. All I know how to do is be a voice. All I know how to do is stand up for others who are struggling. That's all I've been doing with my recovery and my advocacy work with substance use disorder. And she comes in and she's here and she's like, hey, I want to do this walk for your mom. She changed everything. The walk was set. She heard my story. She saw what I was doing. We were plugged in from another mutual friend, and she saw all the stuff that I was doing and how I was trying to go about my grief through prevention and awareness, right? It made me feel better, right? My mother wasn't going to be a victim. She was going to be a weapon of God, right? I was going to use my mother's story to help one more woman not get killed when she tries to leave her abuser, right? To not get stuck in the emotional abusive mess and webs that my mother was wrapped up in. Laverne came in and she's like, we're going to do this heal-a-thon. I'm like, what the fuck's a heal-a-thon? She's like, you're going to wear high heels. I said, why? Right? So she put us down. She changed everything. She made the walk in my mother's name. It's a mile walk in Brockton, Massachusetts, where she raises money for a local domestic violence shelter in the area. Yeah. And we walk in high heels, right? Men, we stand up against domestic violence. We raise awareness and we walk in heels. It's painful as fuck. But we walk.
It catches awareness.
It does.
It's one of those things that you don't think. And Laverne is so powerful. She tells her story
Absolutely.
of domestic violence in my first book, #SheWins. And so I've been connected to her for a few years now. And I love that, she helped give you that outlet to redirect all of that pain and the trauma that you experienced into something that can be productive.
The pain and trauma was redirected. Yeah, the awareness was out there. Yes, I had a very powerful social platform to be out there and change the average. There's not many men that look like me. There's not many white, young, heroin addict, tattooed people from head to toe saying, hey, hitting women's wrong, stop fucking doing that. Right? There's not many people. You are one of a
kind, Rob. You really are.
There's not many people that are out there doing that. And that's fine and dandy. But what really Laverne did for me is she helped me understand where my mother was at. She gave me the knowledge that I needed so desperately to get through those trials without constantly blaming my mom. Well, once a battered wife, always a battered wife, right?
Yes.
You got what you deserved. You stayed in that fucking relationship. She helped me change the way my brain was thinking and my actions kind of followed. I don't think in that time of meeting Laverne through the trial and to where I'm at now, I'd be able to put down some of the grief and pain that I've been able to put down to push through my life and to keep the needle out of my neck. So I am so grateful for Laverne and the Love Life Now Foundation and all the work that they're doing out here, because when they're really out there raising awareness, what they're doing is really helping other survivors and victims get through what they need to get through to get to the other side of their storm. So we threw this event, right? Go ahead.
I was just going to say it's so important, that awareness, because our society has set it up to where, the the women are being asked, why did you stay?
Right.
When that is the wrong point of focus. You know, we should be asking the men, why are you abusing? Right. And so I love that she was able to help you to learn her perspective, you know, because so often women think that, you know, their partner, their boyfriend, their husband is going to change, and they want to see the best in him, and, you know, they want to help him. And, you know, at what point is it going to change? You know, and so often it doesn't. So I think that's a lot, you know, a lot that you had, a lot of emotion and a lot of questions that you had that were really important to understand her perspective, and and for society in general too, to take the blame off of the women and put it back on education and awareness.
She changed my perspective so much that it's helped me be a better father, right? So it's changed my perspective in the way of how I treat my children's mother. It's changed my perception in a way that, like, it's given me a sense of responsibility that I'm going to teach my daughter, her brother, who's 13 years old, how a woman should be treated and what my responsibility as being in a woman's life, how I speak to them. I'm not going to let that set the tone for how my daughter thinks she's going to be talked to and spoken to, right? Like, and I think, like, that's one of the biggest blessings that I could, like, pass on from the Love Life Now Foundation is, like, I'm a vicious heroin addict, right? I've been in some fucked up situations doing some crazy ass shit to get another bag, right? Morals and dignity, integrity isn't something that was in the cards for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But she taught me how to be a father. She taught me some key things of how to change the trajectory of my daughter's life, right? How to instill some things of how she should be treated that she's going to carry with her. So God forbid she never ends up like her fucking grandmother, right? Things that my mother wasn't obviously taught, right?
That's so important because, and I love having this conversation with you, Rob, because the male population needs to be involved in this. This is not just about women.
Right.
And Laverne's nonprofit, Love Life Now Foundation, so she helps give you that education about how to raise your daughter and your son, and how to change the
dynamics and personal relationships in my own life.
Yeah.
How to stop pushing out and turn it inside and find out who and how I want it to be, to stop and do my part so nobody else turns out to be like my mother, right? And the cool thing about this walk is that the proceeds to this walk was donated to Respond Inc., which is a local domestic violence shelter that just so happens to be in the hometown that me and my mother grew up in, right? Somerville, Massachusetts. So I built these amazing relationships with some of these domestic violence shelters. My phone now rings, not just from recovering addicts who want to better their lives and turn their life around. My phone rings, messages come in from other women and men who want to stop beating their women, who want to get help from the men that are beating them. And I'm able to help everybody as a whole. And I am now that big Rolodex of resources, just like that domestic violence woman was for me in that courtroom. And I'm able to facilitate these resources like that. And as time went on through these trials, I got involved in all of Laverne's things. And I've met so many wonderful survivors, so many strong, empowering women. I got to walk in a domestic violence fashion show and see women walk out scared and insecure, and then when they walk a second time, just shaking it and powerful and empowered and just feeling themselves. Like, it's a blessing for me to be around survivors, because, like, I'm so grateful that they got the opportunity that my mother didn't get, right? And I know how the other side of the street is, and I know what their children are going to go through. I know what their family's going to go through. I know what the questions their family members will be asked for. So when I see anybody get away from a domestic violence situation or relationship, I'm extremely grateful, because I see the other side of it, right? And so I started rocking with Laverne. I rocked with her heavy, you know what I mean? And my story got out there. Kayla Hayes, she's amazing. Absolutely. I got to meet her. I don't even know how, but she's fantastic. You know, all these stories, huh?
It's a network.
It really is. All these stories of perseverance and steadfastness, right? It's a blessing to see, because I relate and I identify with coming from the depths of hell, pulling myself out from under a bridge and now being a productive member of society. Like, the perseverance and steadfastness is a real thing. And the strength and the effort it takes for a woman to pull herself out of a domestic violence, or man, it takes serious courage and serious work on ourselves. And anybody who's willing to work that hard for the outcome that they want, they've got my whole heart. And yeah, so we went through the trial, and I had to sit through some things that I wish I never had to listen to. The 911 call. There was some pictures. There was just some fucked up shit going on in that courtroom, and I got Mr. Personality. You know what I mean? I'm friendly with the jury now. I still got some of them on Facebook that check in with me. Like, it took them about 6 hours, or maybe even less time than that, for them to come back with a full guilty on murder 1 capital murder charges. The man went away for the rest of his life, and I got the opportunity to go up into the courtroom and face my mother's killer, and I got to sit there and address the court and say my piece, and he was forced to listen to me. And my biggest point that I made in that courtroom, because part of his defense at that time is that he was an alcoholic, and I responded back to the counsel for him that I'm a vicious heroin addict alcoholic. I'm not out there killing people. I'm working on myself, and I'm getting better. I said, this man took my mother, but I'm not going to allow this man to take my recovery. And at that point, it was over, but it wasn't over, right? So I came back to Massachusetts, and now, like, it's been the hardest thing I've ever had to go through. Like, I struggled tremendously with so many different things. And what I started to really focus on, because one of the things that was brought up is that he wouldn't do it if he wasn't drunk. I started to see, and I started to hear that, he loves me, but he wouldn't hit me if he wasn't drunk or he wasn't high on methamphetamine. Oh, he only hits me when he's getting high. You know what I mean? And I started hearing these things, and I started to,
What do you think about that?
Well, so I can relate and identify, I'm not even going to lie, with my mother's killer. Barrett Poses murdered my mother in a drunken rage, right? I can't tell you how many times that I would take a few Klonopins or Xanax and wake up in a jail cell not knowing what the hell I did, praying it wasn't what he did, right? Yeah. I can relate and identify, because I could be in the same situation the next time I pick up my drug of choice. It could happen just like that. I can relate and identify because I know what it's like to have my whole life taken away from me in a blink of an eye and be it's terrible. I see so many gaps in substance use disorder, alcoholism, and domestic violence, right? I see so many stories where I think like almost 80% of the stories I hear, there's some sort of substance or alcohol use in play. I think just like, I think in most cases, it's a co-occurring issue, right? I feel like there's past trauma and fucked up morals in an individual to make them hit a woman. And, there's some substance use disorder that's going on with the man, and you put the two together, it's like oil and water, and bad things happen. I think that if we can find a way to address the substance use, and we can bring down the domestic violence, I feel that if we can continue to advocate domestic violence, we can, expose more substance use, and it kind of goes hands in hand, and people can get the help that they severely need. I've run into stories of women being stuck in these domestic violence situations. We're in the middle of a pandemic. There are more women stuck at home with their abusers as there's ever been. I'm seeing more alcoholism rise, where they're home drinking. I'm seeing so much more. I've ran into women stuck in battered, beaten, and broken situations where they're self-medicating because it's all they can do to ease what they're going through emotionally and physically.
Let's talk about that for a minute, because recently I've been more aware of past traumas and really, about how healing happens in layers. And it takes like peeling back the onion and looking at everything, and how much even our past, our childhoods, affect us, and we don't even realize, that we're still holding on to that. And, I've went through a lot of things because I've written my story for my next book coming out with She Wins Too. And I've spent a few months, just really digging deep and looking at everything, through life, and addressing them and going to therapy again, you know what I mean? Because I realized there were unresolved issues. And just wondering, because, there have been women who've said to me, are there women who were in abusive relationships who with alcohol? And I said, of
Absolutely.
course, like definitely, you know what I mean? Because where does all of that pain go from the hurt, from the pain, and
Where does it go one step after? Okay, we got them out of their domestic violence
right,
situations. Their life's turning around, but how is in the underlying issues and trauma that come along with the abuse that they just got away from? Quickest
exactly.
thing
It
is,
doesn't end when you leave.
doesn't.
That's just the beginning. So I want to ask you about this because of your work in recovery and tell me a little bit about what you've done with the detox centers, what you've
So I
created.
think it's great. I think it's great, right? So I've got this beautiful resource called, the treatment center is protected by HIPAA. We can't tell anybody where you're at,
Hmm.
right? So I run into these situations where these women are, self-medicating, being abused. They can't get out. My phone will ring quickly. We get them into treatment. Nobody knows where they are. And they've got a full continuum of care ahead of them. So they're safe for the next 60 to 90 days to be able to get back, to be able to work on themselves. I mean, it takes 30 days to create a habit. It takes a little bit longer to break one. And like they're given that chance, that opportunity to come in and break the habits and that codependency, to really put one foot in front of their other and work on themselves. They're able to
Okay, so
address some
how
of
is that different? I'm going to stop you here because I'm wondering if anyone is worried about going to a domestic violence shelter and maybe they have been coping with alcohol substances to get through. What is the difference in going into a detox center? Yes, it's medical. There's the HIPAA. Like, does that add additional benefits that we're maybe not looking at, as far as domestic, what their opportunity is?
So in detox, the first thing that's going to get addressed is that substance use alcoholism, right? So they're going to be able to come off of the alcohol, which in turn is going to make them make better decisions. It's going to give them a clearer state of mind and a more freedom to be able to make the right they need to make for their life. So when they come in, it's coming into a hospital, almost like a hospital-based setting with foods provided, place to sleep. It's very comfortable, especially in our detoxes. And then there's case managers and therapists and things like that around the clock to able kind of help you and put us as they would in a domestic violence shelter. And then you can put a plan together to go to further treatment. You can end up at a treatment center for another 30 days continuous and get another case manager and therapist to help work through some things. And from what I've seen, people that come in to detox to handle the part before they address the trauma part have a better chance of working through the trauma and not drinking. I mean, I go to a domestic violence shelter. If I have substance use disorder, I'm just going to drink and use in the shelter.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's the wait lists are a little different, right? Detox is a little quicker to get into. Sometimes the situation is so severe that, I've had places call me that need to get the individual out immediately. They don't have time to wait for a domestic violence shelter to open up, but she is a severe alcoholic. My phone's on.
That's what I'm wondering, if there's a little bit, of an additional benefit right there, if there is any kind of mechanisms used with substances.
Yeah, there definitely are. We can definitely triage first and make the plan later. If the plan is to go through treatment to address and then get into a domestic violence shelter, my facilities can facilitate that too. Mm-hmm. With the help and resources available to me, there's many, there's shelters in different places that we work with. Actually, some domestic violence sober living homes that women can go to here in Massachusetts, where they can be held accountable for their substance use and alcoholism, but at the same time, be, any kind of domestic violence situation, warrants and restraining orders are brought to light and everybody's safe. And it's just kind of some amazing things that are going on out here. I see it quite frequently that people are self-medicating because of the abuse they're under. And I see a lot of men saying they wouldn't have done it if they were drunk. Out there listening or come across this podcast and they're drinking too much and doing some dumb shit with their ladies. We address the substance issues, chances are things can get better. So it's better to make that call before you end up sitting in a jail cell for, a life sentence like Barrick did because of my mother. Absolutely. And that's kind of where.
Absolutely. Your story is so powerful. And, I'm wondering, like, when we're talking about, families and friends who, maybe suspect that they're in an abusive relationship and they don't know what to do. After you came back from Florida and before the murder.
Well, there was some yelling and screaming. The dynamic of the relationship changed. It got a lot more loud. So people in the trailer park were picking up to the things that were going on behind closed doors, but nobody saw something or said something. It just wasn't there. If you see something, you got to say something, right?
You know, I say all the time that abuse thrives in secrecy, and we have to stand up and we have to educate.
Absolutely. 100%.
So I want to tell people, you know, if they think their family member or friend is what would you say? How do you handle that?
So right now for me, it was like, I have to tell people like, oh, we're going in. Are you still lagging? Oh. Am I good now? It was lagging a minute there. Okay. I think for me, because there were the people that came out to tell me, oh, we heard the screaming and yelling. We knew something wasn't right. They look like assholes, because if you knew something was right, why didn't you say something? Why didn't you reach out to the local police department when you heard the loud noises and heard the big bangs and didn't think that it was, in quote, snitch? Right. Like, you have to say something. If you see something, say something, because you might not have the chance to say it again.
Absolutely.
It really does. This situation could have been prevented if somebody in that trailer park had opened their mouth, broke the silence, and said something about what was going on in my mother's house. I believe that, because if I had gotten wind of it, I would have been on a plane up there to evict him myself. You know what I mean? So It's like, if we don't talk about I'd rather say something and not be true than not say something and it could be true.
Absolutely.
It's crazy. And that was one of the things with Laverne, and started rocking with Laverne on this prevention thing. And I just really have people who had the audacity to come up to me and say like, yep, what'd you do about it? I didn't do nothing. You're an asshole. Yeah. You know? So It's like, you contributed to the man's and what transpired in this trailer, because you didn't want to get uncomfortable and grow as a human being and say something to protect you.
Yeah. I hear you.
So I get going.
Well, you have a strong story, and I'm so happy that, you know, we're having this conversation, and on so many levels, it's so necessary and important. You doing as a father with your daughter, and you have 2 kids, right?
I've got 3.
What you're doing with them to change the way that they grow up and have in their confidence and all of that stuff that plays into domestic violence.
I'm doing the right thing. My little one's spoiled. She's 4. She's a princess. So I'm going to have some serious issues with the way I spoil her. So whoever comes around has to have deep pop. She's going to be pretty high end. And I know I'm shooting myself in the foot, but it's bad. I mean, I try to speak to them, and I try to empower my daughter. I try to let her know that she is a princess, and I try to let her know that she does deserve the best of everything. I try to, the kids' mother situations are, the baby mama situations, I try to, no matter how, it's really hard. Regardless of how hard situations can be, there's maintain a level of respect, right? I maintain a level of respect that, you know, right? Somebody else is loving my child when I'm not there and has, you know, custody and is the eyes and ears. And the way that anybody, not even just their mother, any female in my life that my daughter watches me, it's just like with my recovery. If I give up, you don't know who's watching me. You know what I mean? Yeah. It really comes down to that. Like, I want her to mirror, you know, the way that I do what I do, not as I say. If that makes sense. Yeah. I'm just leading by example for them. It might not be the right to settle for less. My God is going to know that, you know, daddy loved mommy. Daddy respected mommy. Daddy would go the extra mile, you know, leads us, you know, daddy's always there, and she can always come to daddy no matter what. And that's really it. I'm a recovering heroin addict. I just try to do the best. I'm just grateful today. You know what I mean? That's kind of where it's at. I do my best. I love my kids and show up and be available. I wasn't. Yeah. You know. I know. I hear you. I think what you've done, the way you've their people, it's so admirable. And I just think, you know, and it's not easy in our society for men to be emotional or talk about their emotions, or even 100%. What you're doing is absolutely incredible. And I feel like you are one of the change makers. And it's true. It's not easy. You know, I'm a sexual abuse survivor. I was abused by my father. I was predisposed to the disease of addiction. my mother's trauma, the things I've gone through. It's not easy as a man to raise my hand. People that I don't even know from a hole in the wall that see me on a social media or hear me in a meeting or hear me at some event talking, like the courage to do it. How do they? Not everybody is gonna. We gotta meet people where they're at, right? And for me, it's like I don't know where something I say, someone's gonna take it and be able to apply it and get themselves out of the city situation that they may be in. I heard that. Thank you. I didn't know this. I didn't know that. And I know it's working. I know it's working. You know, I'll speak at an event, and I heard you speak at an event. It took me a while, but this really stuck. And I'm grateful that I got to hear you because, you know what, like I was able to, you know, apply some of that and get through what I needed to get through. And now I'm here with 2 years clean and sober. It's a beautiful thing. There's therapeutic value in this shit. And it helps me more than I can help anybody else. And I think that's kind of where it's person. I'm up here speaking and sharing because it helps me more than I'm going to ever help anybody else. And it keeps me clean and it allows me to show up for my kids. And that, like I said, she's going to be a weapon of fucking God. You know what I mean? She's not going to be a victim. I'm going to be my mother's voice. I'm going to carry that. And if one baby in and can relate to my mother's story, so be it. My mother's death was, I'm not going to say it was worth it, but it was life. And I'll take that.
Chills. That gives me chills.
I'll take it.
So is there anything?
I mean, I'm a vicious heroin addict. There's a lot of things. I think at this different. I think everything transpired the way that it was supposed to happen, that this was all in the plans well before years ago when America Online came into the household. I feel like that, yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm about to cry, Jesus Christ. Yeah, but that's kind of where I'm at. God had bigger purpose in another way. That's really how I look at it. I had my mom. I had the enabling money for heroin. She supported me through treatment and sent me cigarettes into detox. She was there for the birth of a couple of my kids. She did everything she could for me. I just needed her in another way because other people needed her too.
Yeah.
Are the message, and some people carry it. My mother had to be the message for me to carry it and use her voice. And what happened? I see the I don't want to say benefits because that makes me feel really shitty talking. That has come out of a really, really traumatic and fucked up situation. I see it. I see it on a day. I needed her just in a different way. That's it.
Well, I feel like, unfortunately, there's a lot of to turn that around and to repurpose it and to use it for good. To me, speaks of so much hope for other people to be able to channel that is productive. And I just think that that is so valuable, and you are such an example of all of that, you know? Thanks so much for participating in the #SheWins conversation today. If you have questions you'd like me to answer on a future podcast, or if you're looking for advice, or if you're ready to tell your story, email info@alisadivine.com.